The millionaire panics without a translator until the cleaning solved it in 1 minute. And what he after that fateful meeting, David couldn't stop thinking about Emma. The woman who had been so unexpectedly kind to him. Someone who had no reason to help him, yet still did. He couldn't deny that the experience had left a lasting impression on him. The deal was sealed, and his investor was thrilled with the results. But what David hadn't anticipated was that Emma had left something deeper in his mind, an unfamiliar sense of gratitude and respect. He knew he needed to find a way to thank her, to acknowledge the role she had played in turning his day around. It wasn't just about business anymore. There was something else, something that made him realize how much he had taken his life for granted. As the days passed, David couldn't shake the thought of Emma. He had never imagined that a simple act of kindness from someone in a completely different world would affect him so profoundly. So, he decided to do something about it. He arranged for a lunch to be delivered to the hotel, a thank you gesture, though he wasn't sure it would be enough to show how much he appreciated her. He needed to express his gratitude in a way that went beyond just words. Emma was surprised when she received the invitation. She didn't expect anything in return for what she had done. Helping someone was simply part of who she was, and she didn't see it as a big deal. But when she saw David's message, something stirred within her. She didn't know what to expect, but the invitation felt sincere. She agreed to meet him at the hotel restaurant, not sure what to expect, but curious nonetheless. When she arrived, she was greeted by David, who had arranged a private table for them. He looked different this time, less tense, more relaxed. There was an ease in his demeanor that hadn't been there before. As they sat down, David immediately apologized. "I owe you more than just a thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "You did more than help me out of a jam. You reminded me of something I'd forgotten: human connection, kindness, and the power of being present for others. That's something I've lost sight of in my pursuit of success." Emma looked at him, her brow furrowed. She wasn't sure what to say. She had never expected this level of honesty from someone like him. "I don't know what to say," she replied quietly, feeling a little awkward. "I was just doing my job. I didn't think it was a big deal." "It was," David said. "You have no idea what it means to me. But I want to do something for you. I've been thinking about how I can help you, how I can make this right. What you did for me wasn't just an act of kindness. It was an act of courage. You were willing to step up, to help someone who was a complete stranger. That's rare, and I want to acknowledge it." Emma shook her head, not sure how to process his words. She wasn't used to being thanked for the things she did. "I don't need anything in return," she said, looking down at the table. "I don't do these things for praise or recognition." "I understand that," David said, his tone warm. "But I still want to offer you something. A real opportunity. I'd like to offer you a role in my company. A position where your skills can be fully appreciated, where you can make a real impact. I believe in you, Emma." Emma was stunned. She hadn't expected this. She had never imagined that her small act of kindness could lead to something so big. She was overwhelmed, not knowing how to respond. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything right now," David said with a smile. "Take your time. But know that I'm offering you a chance to build something bigger than both of us." As they talked, Emma felt a shift in herself. The doubts that had held her back started to fade, replaced by the possibility of something more. More than just a job, more than just a transaction. This could be her chance to finally create the future she had always dreamed of. But she needed to trust herself, to take a leap of faith. And as she looked at David, she saw not just a businessman, but someone who truly valued her. She realized that this was the beginning of something more than just a professional opportunity. It was a chance to find a new path, to grow, and to heal. The following days were a whirlwind of decision-making. Emma wasn't sure at first, but after careful consideration, she accepted David's offer. The transition wasn't easy. She had always been a humble woman, working hard to make ends meet. But now, she was stepping into a new world, a world where her talents could truly shine. And as she began to work with David, she realized something else. This wasn't just about business. This was about connection, about building something meaningful. And as the days turned into weeks, Emma found herself more than just a part of David's team. She was becoming part of his life in ways neither of them had expected. Stay tuned for the next part of this journey, where their connection grows even deeper and the true impact of their bond is revealed. As the weeks went by, Emma settled into her new role at David's company, finding herself both excited and intimidated by the opportunity she had been given. It was a far cry from her former life, where every day had been a struggle to make ends meet. Now, she was surrounded by people in sharp suits and important meetings, but she had to remind herself that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. The first few days had been overwhelming, but with David's encouragement, she found her footing. Her job wasn't just about translation anymore. It was about making connections, bringing value, and most importantly, believing in herself. David had kept his promise, guiding her every step of the way, showing her the ropes of the business world. He respected her for the person she was, not for where she came from or what she had, and that made all the difference. Still, as much as she appreciated his support, Emma struggled with an internal conflict. She felt like an outsider in this world of high power and prestige. She had been working in a hotel as a cleaning staff just weeks ago, and now she was sitting in meetings with CEOs, negotiating deals. It was hard not to feel like an imposter. One afternoon, as she was reviewing some contracts in the office, David stopped by her desk. "Emma, can we talk?" he asked, his tone casual but serious. She looked up from her paperwork and nodded. "Of course." They sat down in a quiet corner of the office, and David leaned back in his chair, studying her for a moment. "I've noticed you've been a little distant lately," he said gently. "You're doing amazing work, but I can tell something's off. You've been holding back. What's going on?" Emma hesitated. She hadn't realized how much she had been holding in until now. She felt exposed, but at the same time, she knew she could trust David. He had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. Finally, she spoke. "I don't feel like I belong here. I'm just a girl from a small town. I don't know if I'm ready for all of this," she said, her voice cracking slightly. David looked at her with understanding. "Emma, you're here because I believe in you. This isn't about where you come from. It's about what you can do. And I see a lot of potential in you. Don't let your past hold you back from your future." His words hit her harder than she expected. She had always felt like her past defined her, like she wasn't worthy of a better life. But now, sitting in front of David, she realized that maybe he was right. Maybe she was more than just her past. David smiled, his eyes warm. "You're not alone in this, Emma. I know it's overwhelming, but we'll figure it out together." As they talked, Emma felt a sense of relief wash over her. For the first time since joining the company, she felt like she was truly seen. Not as a cleaner who had stumbled into a fancy office, but as someone with real potential, someone who could make a difference. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Emma threw herself into her work, becoming more confident and assertive in meetings. She worked closely with David, learning the ropes of the business, and slowly but surely, she started to believe in her own abilities. She had come a long way from her old life, but it wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about finding her place in a world she once thought she didn't belong in. One night, after a particularly successful meeting, David asked her to join him for dinner to celebrate. "You've earned this," he said, his voice full of pride. As they sat across from each other at a quiet restaurant, Emma realized how much she had changed. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into this office just a few months ago. She had found something more than success. She had found her confidence, her worth, and a future she could finally be proud of. As they talked over dinner, David's eyes softened. "I'm really proud of you, Emma," he said quietly. "You've come so far, and I know this is just the beginning." And as Emma looked at him, she knew he was right. This was only the beginning. But now, she was ready for whatever came next. As the weeks passed, Emma continued to thrive in her new role, but despite her growing confidence at work, there was still a lingering sense of uncertainty. She had made tremendous progress, learning the business, handling complex deals, and gaining the respect of her colleagues. But something kept her awake at night. She had become too comfortable with the idea that she didn't belong, too used to the idea of being an outsider. She had seen the world of high-powered executives, but deep down, she wasn't sure if she could ever truly be part of it. David, however, was determined to prove her wrong. One afternoon, after a long day of meetings, David invited her to join him at a charity event he was hosting. "You've been working incredibly hard, Emma. I think it's time you see the other side of the business. Come, meet some of the people you'll be working with in the future." Emma hesitated for a moment. She wasn't sure she was ready for another world of polished suits, polished smiles, and perfect decorum. But she trusted David, and if he thought she was ready, maybe it was time to take that step. As the event started, Emma felt out of place. The ballroom was stunning, full of expensive dresses, well-dressed men, and loud chatter. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong here, that she was just a girl who had worked as a cleaner not long ago. But then, David appeared by her side, dressed in a sharp suit, his presence commanding attention as usual. "You look amazing," he said with a smile, offering his arm. "Come with me. Let's introduce you to a few people." Emma tried to keep up, but she felt a wave of discomfort. She was used to being in the background, used to observing, not participating. But as they mingled, Emma began to see a side of the business world she had never experienced before. People weren't just focused on their wealth or status. They were interested in making real connections, in finding common ground. And as Emma talked to a few key people, she realized something. She wasn't just here because of David. She was here because she had earned it. It wasn't about fitting into a world of glitz and glamour. It was about what she could contribute to it. By the end of the night, Emma felt a shift in herself. She wasn't the nervous, uncertain woman who had walked into the company months ago. She was someone with her own strengths, her own value. David, who had been by her side the entire evening, looked at her with approval. "You did great tonight," he said, his voice full of warmth. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Emma. You belong here, and I'm glad to have you on my team." Emma smiled, but this time, it wasn't a shy smile. It was one of confidence. She realized that her place in this world wasn't because of her past, but because of what she brought to the table now. As they left the event, David turned to her. "I'm proud of you," he said, "and I think it's time you start believing in yourself the way I do." For the first time in a long while, Emma felt the weight of self-doubt lift. She didn't need anyone's approval but her own. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but it was hers to walk, and she was ready to take that next step. As the night ended, David's words echoed in her mind, and she knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. Emma had found not only her place in the company, but her place in her own life. Stay tuned to see how her journey unfolds, as the business world and her own dreams collide in unexpected ways. The weeks that followed the charity event marked a turning point in Emma's journey. She had started to feel like a true part of the company, and her confidence had blossomed. Her interactions with the team had become more seamless, and her ideas were being recognized in meetings. But despite all the progress, there was still one thing that made her uneasy: her relationship with David. Over the past few months, they had grown close, more so than she had anticipated. She valued his mentorship and the opportunities he had provided, but there was an undercurrent of something more. She could feel it when their eyes met, when they shared a quiet conversation after a meeting. She tried to dismiss the feelings that had begun to develop, thinking that it was just gratitude for everything he had done for her. But deep down, Emma knew it was something more. David, too, had noticed the shift. Their bond had grown from professional respect to something more personal, though neither of them had yet acknowledged it. David had always been careful with his emotions, keeping his distance from everyone except his closest associates. But with Emma, it was different. She had brought a kind of warmth into his life that he hadn't realized he needed. One evening, as they worked late in the office, the air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. David broke the silence, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Emma, I've been thinking about you a lot lately," he said, his gaze fixed on her. She looked up, her heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to mask the nervousness in her voice. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "I think you know what I mean. It's hard to ignore the way we've both changed over the past few months. You've become more than just a colleague to me." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had known this moment was coming, but hearing it out loud made everything feel so real. She hadn't expected him to speak first, but now that he had, she felt a rush of emotions she wasn't prepared to deal with. "David, she started, but he stopped her with a raised hand. "I know we've both been focused on our work, and I respect that. But I can't ignore how I feel about you." Emma felt a wave of vulnerability wash over her. She had always kept her emotions guarded, never allowing anyone to see too much. But with David, it felt different. "I care about you too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. David's expression softened, and he took a step closer to her. "I think we both deserve something more than just the business," he said, his words full of sincerity. Emma felt her heart race as she looked into his eyes. She had been afraid of acknowledging the feelings between them, afraid of what it might mean for her career, for their dynamic. But in this moment, standing face to face with David, she realized that they had built something real, something worth exploring. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice trembling. David reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I'm saying that I don't want to keep pretending anymore. I want us to explore what's between us, beyond the office, beyond the business." Emma's heart swelled, and she couldn't help but smile. She had spent so long building walls around herself, protecting her heart from disappointment. But in David's presence, those walls began to crumble. For the first time in years, she felt like she could let go and trust again. "I'm willing to try," she said softly. David's smile was one of relief and joy, and he pulled her into a gentle hug. "You don't have to decide everything right now," he murmured. "But I'm glad you're willing to take a chance with me." In that moment, Emma realized that this wasn't just about the job or the opportunity anymore. It was about the connection they shared, the possibility of something deeper and more meaningful. As they pulled away, Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. She wasn't sure where this path would take them, but for the first time, she was ready to walk it, together with David. The next chapter of their story had just begun, and Emma was ready to embrace it fully. Stay tuned as their relationship grows, and their future unfolds in ways neither of them expected. As the days turned into weeks, David and Emma's relationship continued to evolve, growing stronger with each passing moment. They had crossed a line that neither of them had expected to cross, and while there was still a lot of uncertainty, they both felt a deep connection that went beyond anything they had experienced before. Emma's confidence continued to soar in the workplace, but the personal side of their relationship was a different story. They were careful, taking things slow, not wanting to rush into anything that might jeopardize the balance they had worked so hard to build. Yet, the more time they spent together, the more they realized just how much they meant to each other. One evening, as they worked late in the office again, David glanced up from his paperwork and caught Emma staring out the window, her face thoughtful. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his voice gentle. Emma looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. "I've been thinking a lot about everything about us. About what we're doing here." David stood up and walked over to her, his eyes softening as he watched her. "I know what you mean. It's a big step, and I don't want to rush you into anything you're not ready for," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. Emma gave him a small smile. "I'm not rushing. But sometimes I feel like I'm still that girl who didn't belong anywhere, you know? Like, I don't deserve to be here, to be with you. I still feel like I'm pretending." David's heart ached as he listened to her words. He knew exactly what she meant. He had seen her grow from a woman who doubted her worth to someone who had become an indispensable part of the company. But he also understood that Emma's past still held a grip on her. "You belong here, Emma," David said firmly. "You've earned everything you have, and you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Not to me, not to anyone. And you certainly don't need to pretend. You've already shown more courage, more kindness, and more strength than most people ever will. I'm proud of you, and I'm proud to have you by my side." Emma's eyes filled with emotion, and for a moment, she just stood there, absorbing his words. It was the first time someone had said that to her, not just as an employee, but as a person. She had spent so long doubting herself, not realizing that the change she had been seeking was already happening. "Thank you," she whispered. I think I just needed to hear that." David smiled and pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. "You'll always have my support, Emma. No matter what happens, you've got this. We've got this." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's embrace, Emma realized something. She had spent so long waiting for someone else to tell her she was worthy, but the truth was, she had already proved it to herself. The next morning, as they entered the office together, David took a deep breath and glanced at Emma, his face serious but filled with determination. "I have something I want to do, and I need you with me on this," he said. "I've been thinking a lot about the future of the company, and I think it's time we take it in a new direction. I want to make a big move, and I can't do it without you." Emma looked at him, intrigued. "What are you thinking?" she asked. David smiled. "I want to give you a leadership role in the company. You've proven that you're more than capable of handling it, and I believe you're ready for it. Will you join me in taking this next step?" Emma's heart raced. This was more than she had ever imagined. A leadership role? It was everything she had worked for and more. I don't know what to say," she replied, her voice full of surprise and gratitude. Say yes, David said, his voice gentle but certain. Because this is the future we're building together. Emma smiled, the weight of the moment sinking in. Yes, she said, her voice steady and confident. I'm ready. And just like that, Emma had stepped into the future she had once thought was out of reach. With David by her side, she knew they could achieve anything. The journey was far from over, but now, she was ready to face whatever came next, because she had finally found her place. Stay tuned to see how Emma's new role challenges her, and how her relationship with David grows even deeper in the next chapter. As Emma settled into her new leadership role, the weight of the responsibility began to feel more real every day. She had spent months working alongside David, learning the ropes, and growing both professionally and personally. But now, the stakes were higher. She was no longer just an assistant or a translator. She was in charge, and with that came the pressure to perform. The first few weeks were overwhelming. Emma found herself juggling multiple projects, managing teams, and making decisions that could affect the entire company. She was determined to prove herself, not just to David, but to herself. Every day, she woke up early, stayed late, and made sure that nothing slipped through the cracks. It was exhausting, but she was driven by a sense of purpose that she had never felt before. She could feel herself changing. The girl who once doubted her place in this world was now standing at the helm of a major company, making decisions that would shape its future. But even with all the progress, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was still on the edge of something bigger. She had made it this far, but the road ahead was still uncertain. One evening, as she worked late in her office, David stopped by, as he often did. "You're burning the midnight oil again, huh?" he said with a soft smile, leaning against the doorframe. Emma looked up from her work, her eyes tired but focused. "Just making sure everything is on track," she replied, her voice steady. "I can't afford to let anything slip." David stepped into the room, his expression turning more serious. "You're doing great, Emma. But I think you're pushing yourself too hard." Emma shook her head. "I have to. This is a big opportunity for me. I can't mess it up." David crossed the room and sat down across from her. "I understand that. But you don't have to do it alone. You've got a team, and you've got me." Emma looked at him, her heart racing. "I know, but it feels like I have to prove that I belong here. To everyone, especially to myself." David leaned forward, his gaze softening. "You've already proven yourself, Emma. You're here because you've earned it, and you don't have to prove anything more to anyone. But you do need to take care of yourself." His words hit her harder than she expected. She had been so focused on proving her worth that she had forgotten about taking care of herself. The pressure, the long hours, and the constant push for perfection had taken a toll on her well-being. She realized that David was right. She couldn't keep going at this pace. "You're right," she whispered, a wave of exhaustion washing over her. "I've been so caught up in the work that I haven't taken a moment to breathe." David smiled and reached across the table, placing a hand on hers. "It's okay to take a step back, Emma. You're doing incredible things here. But you can't pour from an empty cup." Emma nodded, feeling a sense of relief that she hadn't realized she needed. She had always believed that working harder was the only way to succeed, but now, she was starting to see that balance was just as important. Over the next few weeks, Emma made a conscious effort to slow down, to trust her team, and to lean on the support around her. The results were immediate. She felt less stressed, more focused, and better equipped to handle the challenges that came her way. And through it all, David remained by her side, offering guidance, encouragement, and, most importantly, the reassurance that she was capable of achieving everything she had set out to do. Their connection had deepened, both professionally and personally. What started as a mentor-mentee relationship had transformed into something more. They were equals now, both working together to build a future they could be proud of. But as Emma grew more comfortable in her role, she couldn't help but wonder where their relationship was headed. David had always been there for her, but was it just professional support, or was there something more between them? She had been hesitant to address it, unsure of what it would mean for their work dynamic. But deep down, she knew that their connection was too strong to ignore. It was time for both of them to face what was happening between them, and what they truly wanted for the future. Stay tuned as Emma and David navigate the complexities of their relationship, balancing their personal feelings with their professional goals. As Emma and David continued to grow closer, Both in their personal and professional lives, there was an unspoken tension in the air. They had been walking a fine line between their deepening connection and the professional environment they had worked so hard to build. But Emma could no longer ignore the way she felt. She had always tried to keep her emotions in check, focusing on her work, pushing herself to be the best. But the more she saw David, the more she realized that her feelings for him went beyond admiration or gratitude. It was something deeper, something she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge until now. One evening, as they worked late into the night, Emma finally reached a breaking point. She had been bottling up her feelings for far too long, and now, standing across from David in the quiet of the office, she knew it was time to speak her truth. "David, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. David looked up, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "Of course. What's on your mind?" She hesitated, the weight of her words heavy on her chest. "I've been thinking about us. About everything. And I need to be honest with you." David's expression softened. "You know you can always be honest with me, Emma." Emma took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I've realized that my feelings for you are more than just professional. They've grown into something else, something I can't ignore anymore. And I don't know what that means for us, for the work we're doing, or even for the future. But I couldn't keep pretending like I don't feel this way." She looked down, afraid of what his response might be. The silence between them seemed to stretch on forever. But then, David stood up and walked over to her, his eyes searching hers. "Emma, I felt the same way for a while now. I didn't want to rush anything, especially not when everything we've built together is so important. But I can't pretend, either. You mean more to me than just a colleague or a team member." Emma's heart skipped a beat as she looked at him, surprised but relieved. "So what does this mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. David smiled softly, his expression warm. "It means we need to take a step forward. Together. We've been through so much already, and we've proven that we can build something strong, both in business and in our personal lives. So why not take this next step?" Emma nodded slowly, her heart racing. She had been afraid of this moment, afraid of how things would change, but now, standing in front of David, she realized that this was the next chapter she had been waiting for. "I'm ready," she said, her voice filled with newfound confidence. David reached for her hand, holding it gently. "We'll figure it out, Emma. I know we will. And no matter what happens, I'm here with you. Always." They stood there, in the quiet of the office, their hands intertwined, knowing that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, Emma felt a sense of peace. She wasn't alone in this journey anymore. Together, they would face whatever challenges came their way, both in the business world and in their relationship. The following days brought new challenges. They continued to work together, but now with a deeper understanding of each other. There were moments of uncertainty, of navigating their evolving relationship within the context of their professional lives, but they tackled it with honesty and respect. They knew it wouldn't always be easy, but they also knew they had something special, something worth fighting for. As they took on new projects together, Emma found herself growing even more in her role, supported by David in ways she had never imagined. Their bond, both personal and professional, became a driving force that pushed them both to achieve greater things. Their relationship was evolving, not just in the romantic sense, but as a partnership that was rooted in mutual respect, trust, and shared goals. As the weeks passed, Emma and David's connection only deepened. They were no longer just two people working together. They were a team, both in business and in life. And as they continued to face new challenges and opportunities, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. Stay tuned as Emma and David navigate the complexities of balancing love and career, and watch how their story unfolds in the next chapter. As Emma and David continued to navigate their evolving relationship, both professionally and personally, they began to realize that their journey had only just begun. They had worked through the challenges of balancing love and career, but now, as they stood together on the precipice of a new chapter, they knew there were still hurdles to face. Yet, in each other, they found strength, understanding, and a deep connection that neither of them had expected. Over time, Emma grew into her role as a leader within the company. With David's guidance, she made bold decisions that propelled the company forward, gaining the respect of her colleagues and competitors alike. Her confidence continued to soar, and her vision for the future of the company became clearer with each passing day. But it wasn't just her professional life that was thriving. Her relationship with David had blossomed into something truly special. They spent their days working side by side, sharing ideas, solving problems, and dreaming of the future. But at night, they found comfort in each other's company, enjoying quiet dinners, long walks, and conversations about everything and nothing. They had become a team, not just in business, but in life. One evening, after a particularly successful business event, David took Emma's hand as they walked through the quiet streets of the city. The evening air was crisp, and the city lights twinkled in the distance. "I've been thinking about everything," David said, his voice filled with warmth. "About where we've been and where we're going." Emma smiled up at him, her heart full. "Me too," she replied softly. "It feels like we've come so far, and yet it's only the beginning." David stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious but gentle. "Emma, I know we've both been focused on the future, but I wanted to take a moment to tell you something." He paused, as if gathering his thoughts. "You've changed my life in ways I never imagined. You've helped me rediscover what really matters, not just in business, but in life. And I want you to know that I'm here for you, always. No matter what happens, you're my partner in every sense of the word." Emma felt her heart swell with emotion. She had known, deep down, that David was the person she wanted to share her life with. But hearing him say it, so openly and honestly, filled her with a sense of peace she hadn't realized she needed. "I feel the same way," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You've shown me that there's so much more to life than just working hard. You've given me the courage to believe in myself and in us." David smiled, his eyes softening as he cupped her face in his hands. "Then let's take this next step together," he said. "No more holding back. We've built something incredible, and now, it's time to build the rest of our lives." In that moment, Emma knew that everything she had worked for, everything she had overcome, had led her to this point. She wasn't just the woman who had once been unsure of her place in the world. She was a strong, confident woman, capable of achieving anything she set her mind to. And with David by her side, she knew there was nothing they couldn't do. As the days passed, Emma and David continued to grow together, both in their personal and professional lives. They faced challenges, celebrated victories, and supported each other through it all. They knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but they were ready for it. Because they had something rare, something that many people spent their entire lives searching for, a love built on trust, respect, and shared dreams. And as they looked ahead to the future, they knew that whatever came their way, they would face it together. The journey was far from over, but now, with each other, they were ready for whatever came next.